I'm here with David Beard, the editor-in-chief of Endless Summer Quarterly, and also the amazing author of this book, All Summer Long, which is comprised of interviews with the Beach Boys, family members, friends, Marilyn Wilson, Mike Love, Al Jardine, Dean from Jan and Dean. So a lot of really cool stuff. And today I wanted to bring all of your questions right to David. So first, do you think that you could tell us, how did you first get into the Beach Boys? How did you come to run Endless Summer Quarterly and like meet the Beach Boys? And if there's just anything else about you you'd like us to know.
Well, I came into the Beach Boys music and that world through Jan and Dean. I believe at the time it would have been 79 or 80, probably 1980, uh, that I saw the Dead Man's Curve, Jan and Dean Dead Man's Curve television movie that I'm sure is on YouTube for people to watch. Oh,
Probably.
it's actually on Prime. You can order it on Prime and watch it.
Oh, nice.
Um, So I discovered I discovered that genre of music. I think I already had Best of the Beach Boys through either Columbia or RCA Record Club or something. Back in those days, they had some sort of weird thing that they advertised. I don't know if it was just in newspapers or where it was. I don't recall where it was advertised, but you could get 10 records. You would choose the 10 records that you wanted, and you would pay for shipping, but
Hmm.
it was like 10 a dime for each record, or I don't remember what the deal was, but it was weird. But I remember I got Barry Manilow live, I got Best of the Beach Boys, I think I got a Steve Martin album. um I don't, I can't really, but I remember Manilow live. But yet, so I discovered the Jan and Dean TV movie, saw it, was just, it was a moment that just really grabbed my attention. And particularly, I tell everybody this. Um, there's a moment where the actors playing Jan and Dean are with their surfboards and they're about to go surfing, or we're to believe that they're surfers.
Hmm.
Um, and and they say, "This sounds so great on tape." And then they all of a sudden they're cutting. They edit it to them in the studio singing the song "Surfing," which is a Beach Boy song, but I had no idea, and a montage of surfers actually surfing. So cut back and forth. And that was the beginning of it, because I wanted to know. I liked the energy and the vibe of the song. I was like, what is this? This is really cool. This music is really interesting to me. And I was roughly 14 years old at the time, and it really interested me. And in those days, you could go out to a record store anywhere. And in the Charlotte area, I could go to, there was one that was near me that was a main current day retail record. You would go in and buy anything that was coming out at that time. In addition to, the entire store had records of all eras, but it was not considered like a collectible record store. Those were everywhere in Charlotte too. There was one place called the Record Exchange that was not far from Grapevine Records. Grapevine's where I bought the Jan and Dean anthology album. And I would go to Record Exchange to try to fill in once I got further into Jan and Dean, fill in my Jan and Dean collection to understand, because it's a collection of, okay, what song is Surf City from? What album is that from? What album is Dead Man's Curve from? Because again, none of that information was just out there to find out. There's no internet. So if you wanted to know, you had to go somewhere, and you had to go through the records and look at the records and try to figure out if something was indeed an original. Typically you could, because most of the records that came out of the 50s and, well, not 50s, the 1960s, I discovered this is true with the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean, but even more so with Jan and Dean, that they had to have mono and stereo copies of the records. It'd say stereo across the top, or if it didn't say anything, that meant it was a mono record. Um,
Hmm.
so I was started collecting, and I started collecting mono and stereo to hear the difference. And I just was building it, and then So through that, I wanted to know more about the Beach Boys because there was a great booklet in the middle of the anthology album that was written by Dave Marsh of Cream Magazine, and it mentioned Brian. And so when I looked at the credits for the songs on the Jan and Dean anthology album, I saw that Surfin' was written by Brian Wilson and Mike Love. I saw that Surf City was a co-write by Brian, and then a handful of other songs. And then I would learn decades later that Jan and Dean's version of Surfin' and Surfin' Safari actually had the Beach Boys singing backing vocals and playing instruments with them. But again, there was no way of knowing that element of the minutia in the beginning because it just wasn't easily accessible. There, even if you found interviews with any of them, that none of the interviews went into kind of the ancillary people or how the relationships. I mean, you really, really, really had to dig. And I don't know how many years it was before I began to discover kind of the different layers of the friendships, and but it was easily by the years down the road. But within a handful of years, Malcolm Leo's great 1985 An American Band documentary came out. And that documentary was like the thing. I mean, that documentary got me. I was already on the way. I was already into Jan and Dean, wanting to know more about the Beach Boys, slowly getting to know more about the Beach Boys. I bought their 1980 Keeping the Summer Alive cassette when it came out. So I think that may have been like the first Beach Boys album I bought upon its release or within the year of its release. So that, and then in my church youth group, the youth minister, Paul Martin, was turning me on to their later stuff, like the LA album and the 10 Years of Harmony collection. And I wasn't terribly interested. It was
interesting.
Too mature sounding for. No, I was still a teenage,
yeah,
in my late teens, and I was interested in the fun, happy, sing-along recordings that were the surf and the girls and the beach and the drag and in the cars. That's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to know that music.
Yeah, I think I had a similar journey too. I always listened to the Beach Boys growing up, like all the hits, like, Surfin' USA, Surfin' Safari, and like I knew like I loved it. Like it was like some of the prettiest sounds I'd ever heard. And then I sort of lost a little bit of interest because as I grew up, I was like, oh, it's just all so happy or whatever. And then I sort of like discovered the like deeper layers of like the kind of complexity and maturity of the music. Surf's Up was like a revelation for me. I was like, oh my gosh, this song is incredible. Like it's just, I saw the layers, and then that made me appreciate that early music even more. So I really resonate with that.
Well, the same is true with me. When I saw Malcolm's documentary, that's where I could not get enough. From that point on, in my discovery of the Beach Boys, I just wanted to know more about Smile. And what he did with the Pet Sounds segment in that documentary is unlike any other documentary. Most of the documentaries, whether they're about Pet Sounds, whether they're about Brian, whether about that era, they will play God Only Knows. They will play Wouldn't It Be Nice? They will play I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, or Caroline No, or some well-known, or Sloop John B maybe even. Malcolm didn't do that. He used Here Today. And when Bruce is walking up the steps and he goes, I joined the band and was wearing Al Jardine's pants and 2 sizes too small. And he said, Brian was about to make a giant leap forward. The album Pet Sounds, and it goes right to Here Today, and it's not them singing, it's the break, it's the bump, ba-dum, and bum, 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 and then dun 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 dun, and that was an introduction that nobody had ever done, and that's what got me. It was like, what is this? I don't know this song. I want to know this song. And I think by that time I had the Pet Sounds album. And I listened to it once, and I think I remembered liking That's Not Me and Sloop John B, because they were like the earlier music, but I didn't really connect. It wasn't, I didn't connect. And so it was Malcolm's thing, because there's also the footage of the, what I did not know, again, we did not know, the Good Vibrations footage for the music video for the they didn't call them music videos then, promotional, Good Vibrations promotional film, where they were wearing the fire hats and they're at the fire station, which is from Good Vibrations. But Malcolm used that footage with the fire segment, the Mrs. O'Leary's cow. And he incorporated studio footage where they're wearing the fire hats in the studio. Brian's tripping on LSD. And I just went, what is this now? And what is going on here? And Dominic Priori's Listen, Vibrate, Smile, Dumb Angel Gazette turned out to be like kind of a Bible for me, because it was a scrapbook of all the articles and the pieces of information that related to the Smile project. Even though Dominic was pretty much enforced the idea that he knew how Smile was to be constructed and everything else, and I initially went with that suggestion, but over time, and once I heard the music, and once I heard the bootlegs by the late 80s, I was constructing my own Smile, just like anybody has, because that's kind of the beauty of that lost art. But I'm a Smile nut to this day. Evanescence being my favorite song by the group, because it's like listening to a combination of a Norman Rockwell and Andy Warhol painting combined to kind of explain, thanks to Van Dyke's vision with Brian, explain the American dream in a song format. And there's nothing quite like it. And Surf's Up is another example. I mean, peripherally, Dennis is kind of an unusual kind of influencer in all this, because he, in the beginning, said, write a song about surfing. and he pops in the studio and Van Dyke and Brian are writing, and he says, he's talking about surfing, and Van Dyke takes that and kind of well, let's use that to this song that's got nothing to do with surfing. This beautiful operatic piece, and we'll call it Surf's Up. And
the whole album, later
they would do that, and I really wish they had not done. There's lots of things that I wish they had done differently. Prime among them that Brian I wish that he had decided to finish Smile, because I think it would have aged the same way, that maybe differently than Pet Sounds, but Pet Sounds did reach number 10 and was considered a failure, which is mind-boggling to me. And it's one of the greatest albums of our time. To this day, it's rated up there. And I don't care who rates it or where, but if Paul McCartney has given a copy to every one of his children, and he has said that no one's musically educated until they hear Pet Sounds, that's enough for me. I don't need to know anybody else's rating of it or anything else. I know that I like it. I know what it means to me. So when I was in my early 20s, I had Pet Sounds on a cassette by that time, and I was driving in my car. And I think it was when it got to Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulders, I believe. And that's when the album just like where I got it. And I can remember thinking, how did I've listened to this record a number of times. How is it that it's just now reaching me? But I think that's true with music in general. Sometimes you're not going to automatically find it. Like Paul McCartney's brand new The Boys from Dungeon Lane. I listened to that several times before I kind of felt all the nuances of it. And now I have a deep appreciation for that record, because I'm amazed that a guy who's 84 years old is still creating such interesting recordings and music, because the music, the tracks themselves are really interesting. And I think I've answered part of your question. What was the other question about the Beach Boys? But
Uh, and I'm wondering how you came to be the editor in chief
oh,
of Endless Summer, and then how did you eventually meet the Beach Boys too? Because I'm kind of like, how do I do that?
well, they're unfortunately, we're losing them, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. Uh, uh, man. So I started collecting records. I went to a record convention in the late 80s at some point, and it's maybe an 88, 89-ish, and I was impatiently behind a guy taking his sweet time going through the Beach Boys records. And I was kind of like this. I was like, come on, I'm thinking to myself, come on, dude, what's the deal here? I need to get in to see if I can find anything about Smile. It's all my entire pursuit was I had to know more about Smile. And because of Dominic's book, I was realizing that tracks from other records were from Smile. I was piecing it all together. Our Prayer and Capanescence were on 2020. Surf's Up was on the Surf's Up album. So I was slowly having to piece all this stuff together. And I couldn't get this guy out of my way. And finally, he turned around. That was Lee Dempsey, who's my business partner to this day with the magazine. Lee, at the time, was writing for Endless Summer Quarterly. It was founded by Rick Edgell and Phil Mast in San Diego in 1987 at some point. So Lee and I met, we became fast friends, and I don't remember the time frame, but we met at that record convention within 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, whatever window of time it was. There was another record convention, and we were both at that. And he said, come on out to my car. I want to play something for you. I went out to his car. We sat in it. He put in a cassette and he played me a bunch of Smile stuff that never been released at that time.
Oh, so it
And
was a bootleg. How did he
yeah,
get his hands on that?
that's a story for another.
Oh,
Lee was in that world. He had been in that world for a long time. So he was a collector. He ejected the cassette, put it in the case, and handed it to me and said, "That's for you." So at the time, he still lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was in Charlotte. He told me about ESQ, that he wrote for it, and he did like session things. His article, I think, was called "Chuck's Rolling" for Chuck Ritz, and he would write an article. So I subscribed to ESQ for a year, and I think that was around 89, 90. It came and the news section was somewhat interesting. The late Les Chan did that, I think, and because it kind of told me a little bit about what the Beach Boys were up to. Not enough, though. And again, no internet. We had no other resource. So I just was like, this isn't offering me anything. I didn't feel like I was getting, and again, I was a Smile nut. I wanted to know more about Smile, and there was nothing in the pages of ESQ that had anything to do with Smile. There were photos of music sheets, like if it was Still Cruising or something. I don't know. I don't recall, but it was like a whole page would be a photo of the sheet music. There would be a couple of photos with Rick and Phil with their arms around the Beach Boys, but didn't provide me with any information. So I took out a subscription for 1 year and did not renew. So that was in 1990-ish. In the summer of 93, by the summer of 93, Lee had moved from Raleigh to Charlotte. I was morning show producer at an oldies station in the early 90s. So we were doing jingles together by that time. The Beach Boys songs. We would like do Little Saint Nick and Help Me Rhonda and stuff, and just reword them so it would be applicable to the call letters of the radio station that I worked at. I still have those around. But so he got a call from Rick and Phil, and I was not there for the phone call, but my understanding was they were burnt out. They didn't want to do it anymore, and they wanted to sell the business license to Lee. Um, so he contacted me and said, "Would you do this with me? I'm not going to buy the business license to do if I have to do it alone. I don't have time to do that. And this does not mean that we will have access to the Beach Boys." I said, "Okay, let's do it." And that's kind of the extent of how it started for us on the East Coast. Lee bought the business license. We started. The first edition we did was in August of '93. My first interview was with Dean Torrance of Jan and Dean. And I was very nervous because this was the guy who was on the record that led to the whole discovery of where I found myself. And Elliot Kendall set that up because Elliot Kendall was a friend of Lee's. I would get to know Elliot over the years, but I didn't know anybody going into this. Lee was the one who knew this group of people, including somebody who just passed away, Peter Riem, who was a great collector and a great writer. Really knew his stuff. So he just passed away. So it's
Oh, I'm sorry for your loss.
well, it's a great loss for the Beach Boys community, indeed. Just as Ed Roach just passed away. This is I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that Billy Hinchy, Jeffrey Foskett, and Brian Wilson aren't here, let alone these other people. And so Lee and I just kind of went on our way. In August of '93, the Beach Boys at that time began their really too short, acoustic, unplugged Good Vibrations, 30 Years of Good Vibrations box set tour, and they began it in Charlotte, North Carolina in November. So I got to see Carl Wilson play wonderful on a keyboard with the spotlight on him.
Wow.
Yeah, Lal was right. I couldn't believe it. I just was like, this is an amazing show. They did vegetables. They did Take a Load Off Your Feet.
I love vegetables.
So
I think it's like one of my favorite songs by them. I love to play it on the piano.
So they did this incredible this box set. Like half the show was like their hits, and the other part was this kind of unplugged, deep cut representation of this 30 Years of Good Vibrations box set, and it was incredible. And that's where I kind of really discovered Matt Jardine, because he was on that tour and he sang Hushabye, and he just nailed it. And so that stands out. The song selection stands out. Carl doing wonderful on keyboards with the spotlight on him stands out. It's just an incredible show. And then they only did that for like through to December, and then they stopped and they didn't do it anymore. And they went back to their regular type of performance. But that gave us something to write about right out of the gate. Within a few years, well, Carl would pass away, in February of '98. And so by that time, I think Lee, like many fans of the group, I'm paraphrasing, but the general consensus is if there's no Wilsons, that's not the Beach Boys, or something to that effect. And I've always looked at it as it's the music. It's not who's performing the music, it's the music. And the music is all of them, So when I go to listen to the album, just because Brian, Dennis, and Carl are no longer here, they're still there. So I never at any time thought, oh, Carl's gone now, it's time to throw in the towel. I looked at it completely different. I was like, Carl's gone. I got to meet this guy. He made a difference in my life. I'm going to move forward as if Carl were here. And I've been doing it that way ever since. Because I just, I don't know. I think John Stamos wrote it really well in the foreword of the book, where he says, my work is passionate, yes, but it's also deeply researched, and I don't pick things apart, I build it up.
I really like that about you, because I think a tendency of a lot of younger fans sometimes, is sort of picking things apart, especially sort of like, ooh, juicy, scandalous details. I think that that's sort of a thing. And I think also now that we have like unprecedented access to like an entire person's life, it's very easy to judge. So I really appreciate your outlook on that.
Oh, who are we to? Well, if you want to judge things, that this is what I would say to anybody who thinks they're in a position to judge. If you're free of mistakes and you're a perfect human being, then go right ahead.
Hmm.
I mean, isn't it the saying is like he who casts the first stone? If you've never made a mistake, then good on you.
You know
I've
what's
made
funny?
plenty.
I keep a rock on my nightstand as a reminder of that.
Oh,
When it's
cool.
like when I'm not like forgiving someone, I'm like, man, like what am I doing throwing the first stone? That's stupid, you know? So I'm like, that's so funny you would bring that up.
So that's it's not it's a to a degree it's a conscious decision, but it's more so about, do I love the music? The answer to that is simply yes, I love the music. So why would I do anything disparagingly to the creators of something that I love? Um,
True.
that makes sense to me. And I really don't quite understand why anybody would. Um, if somebody's a part of something, has created something that you love and you enjoy, it could be anything from you go to your favorite pizza place, and they make your favorite pizza. When
Mhm.
you eat the pizza, are you looking at the guy behind the counter who made the pizza and thinking bad things about him? Or are you just eating the pizza? Um,
That's such a good point.
what are we doing? So, I don't,
Mhm.
they, there's plenty of historic moments or just moments in the Beach Boys career that you kind of go, oh, but um, that was them doing it. I'm sure they're
Mhm.
well aware of the circumstances and the ramifications of their actions. So they don't need me or anybody else digging into that.
Very true.
Perfect example is Charles Manson. Don't want to go there.
Yes.
Don't,
Exactly.
not interested.
Mhm.
You know,
That comes up a lot.
it does comes up too often. I had
Mhm.
that came up when I was coming through on my way up to do the book signings. I actually stayed with a family member who had read. I don't know if they had read Helter Skelter or something, but they were inquiring with me about that chapter in the Beach Boys' lives, and I said, "There's not really much to know other
Yeah.
than he auditioned for Terry Melcher. Terry Melcher turned him down because he could tell he was a lunatic. And
Mhm.
so then Manson sent people to Terry Melcher's house to kill him.
Yep.
And Terry happened to be renting the house out to Roman Polanski. And I don't know if Manson knew that or if he cared, but we have what we have, and totally unnecessary. Just
Absolutely. And
so
I think people, I mean, also the fact that, I'm like, I think people should really treat it as it is, that it's like Dennis inadvertently was involved with someone who was a bad person, a dangerous person. And when he was cognizant enough of that, he kicked them out of his house. Like
mhm.
he was not a dumb man. He was not a
No,
bad man, and I think that people are way too like, did you know he was friends with, I'm like, please. Like, no. Like, really, you can't blame anyone for falling for a cult leader. That's what they do, you
well,
know?
Dennis liked it because Charlie could control the room of girls.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
Dennis liked. And that's what Dennis responded to. And it turned out to be something really evil. And
Yeah.
and it's which is it's just unfortunate. So
Yeah,
next,
and it's no joke. So I'm like, I think sometimes people diminish that to just like a point of trivia. And I'm like, that's not fair. That's someone's life. Probably one of the most traumatic parts of someone's life, I would assume.
Yeah. So it's like if you love the music, then why then then what's the concern? And if you hate the music, then you're listening to the wrong group, and what's the concern?
Yeah,
So
go find another one.
again, it's I just don't understand the fascination with the stuff that just isn't for the benefit of anyone. I mean, what's the
Yep.
benefit?
Or
You know.
pitting Mike and Brian against each other. That's another big thing.
So is that the next conversation we're having?
Well, I wanted to know how you were able to get in contact with the Beach Boys. Like, was it through someone? How much did you bug them? you know?
Well, in the '90s, I would slowly get, I got phone numbers, or I think by that time there was email,
Mhm.
and I would reach out and request interviews and talk to management, talk to publicists, and that's the process. I mean, that's just the process of what you do, especially if a new release is coming out or a new collection of some kind. Then
Yeah.
then they want you to cover it. So that's the process. You communicate. You try to find out what it is they want, and you try to get used to being used.
Yeah.
Because that's not really a lot of fun. Um, because they just want to use you so that you can tell people about their product.
Hmm.
Um, and the group, so that's kind of the trade-off that would happen over time, is just getting to know them as people, not getting to know them as I already knew them as an artist. I just have to put on the record. I did that was not the that was not as interesting. I mean, I wanted to know the hows and the whys of things, but I really wanted to, um, in that process, get to know them, but
Yeah. And were
not
you
not
able
their.
to really befriend them? Like really get to know
Well,
them on a
that's
deeper
what I was
level?
just about to say. It was what I did was not to become their friends. What
Mhm.
what I did was to find out more about the creative process.
Yeah.
Um, Getting to know them over decades, over 30 years, does lend itself to familiarity and becoming friendly. They've done many things to show me kindness and what I guess would be considered as friendship, in multiple ways over the years, and those different conversations. When you have a private conversation with somebody, that's not something that's going into a magazine. Um,
Yeah.
so there have been lots of circumstances with all of them, that where I've had really wonderful moments that I cherish. Um, but I didn't go into it to be their friends. I went into it because I thought the music was interesting.
I think that's really great because I think another thing I want to say, I'm so glad that I sort of have like more of a idea of what the like very young, like 20-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old fans are kind of like. I think a part of it, and especially again growing up, being able to access anything, is like a feeling of over familiarity, like feeling like someone. People kind of talk on the internet like they know the Beach Boys, or they'll make again like judgments about them thinking they know who they are. And I what I appreciate is your sense of boundaries and just like being like, nope, that's I'm here as a you're a journalist in in many ways. And so I just think that's really good because it could very easily become unhealthy or like an indulgence of a fantasy or something like that. But I think you went about it in a really great way. And I also really like the style of I think that you are such a great and impartial in a way, like a very nice neutral interviewer. And you really know how to ask the right questions to like guide out a good answer.
Thank you. Well, when I started, you come with this, what do I want to know? What do I want to know? When you get to talk to the person, that's all you want to know is what you want to know. And that's just not a, I learned pretty early on, even if they would answer the questions. When I go back and listen to those interviews that I have on little micro cassettes, I'm jumping on before they're even done with their answers. And I'm like, I've come so far because it's not more important to get the answer to something you want to know. What's most important is to be able to tap into their memories through their hearts. And that's the most important thing you can do. And then upon the response, follow their lead. But you have to be so knowledgeable about what you're talking about that you can follow and go with them off if you've got 20 questions prepared and you're looking at it and if you've asked question 15 and you're ready for question 16, but they've taken you somewhere else, that the relationship is such that you follow them, but they also trust you to come back to the overall conversation. And it just, again, that was something that took place over time.
That's awesome. And it's funny because like I've never conducted an interview before, so that I'm taking big notes on that. I want to ask you the first question I have from YouTube, which is very nice and simple. What is your favorite Beach Boys album?
Uh,
I know.
I, I I think it tends to be All Summer Long.
Hmm.
Uh, that's my favorite summer album. Just because it's so full of piss and vinegar, and it's just them like at the zenith of summer in 1964. It was just
Hmm.
everything. That's what everybody was listening for, and that album really nails it for me. There's elements of Shutdown Volume 2 that I really love.
Hmm.
But so when we say album, I'm thinking through the lens of that was actually released. Um,
Hmm. Because otherwise it'd probably be Smile, I'm gonna
oh,
assume.
Smile's my favorite body of work.
Of course.
But Sunflower is a really good album, and it's up there for me. There's nothing like it. I don't think of that as a summer record though. I don't think of it as a seasonal at all. I think of it as a mood album. Like when I put it on, I'm in the mood for that music. It could be something that I listen to in the summer. But I
Mhm.
could listen to it any time of the year. And it just, it's something, yeah, that music on that record, really kind of, or that period, the general period, because San Miguel wasn't on that record, and I love San Miguel. Dennis turned into such a monster songwriter. I mean, they all did. They all did, and
Yeah.
that's why I like Sunflower so much, is because it's such a great group record. Um, and it's so good. Um, but I also tend to like Friends a great deal. So I don't really have, you know, a favorite album. But
Mhm.
I do love the way that Friends feels when I listen to it. I love the way that Pet Sounds feels when I listen to it. Sunflower, All Summer Long, I love the juxtaposition between side one and side two of the Today record. Um, they're all very interesting. I had all my drive up to do my Northeast book signings. I put the all the albums from Surf and Safari all the way to Smile in my car,
Wow.
because that's there as covered in my book.
Literally,
So
yes, I was gonna say
so
it's
that's
literally right there.
so that's what I did, is I listened to them in sequential order
Hmm.
while driving
That
to
must have helped at the signings.
well, yeah, it was just to kind of put it's the summer. Here we are,
Yeah.
June, July, and this is the summer, and this is the group that is they're very associated with the summer
Yeah.
season. And I just thought, okay, this is the perfect kind of thing to listen to. I wanted to listen to McCartney's brand new record. I wanted to listen to Ringo's new record, but I thought, no,
Hmm.
no, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna listen just for the Beach Boys so that I can kind of get into that mode. And I have the Jan and the Anthology album out in my car too. But I don't want to buy a new car because I'm afraid it won't have a CD player. And that's
That's
Uh,
a
I kept
possibility. Mine does not have one.
So I just like having the physical CD to put in. But I mean I'll survive because I have Apple Music. I can do it that way. But I just like
Mhm.
having the CD and having CD collection and that sort of thing. So I think I told so coming back around, I don't think I finally ever finished answering your question about me being the editor in chief. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
Carl dies, and this is kind of covered in my introduction in the book. So once there's no Wilson's touring, Lee, as best I could tell, just his interest waned. It just wasn't for him. And I was so invigorated and inspired by Carl's passing because it was such a sad event that I wanted to celebrate them more. So I carried on, and so Lee wrote. I don't know if it was called a letter of resignation or what it was, but we ran it in the September 1999 edition of ESQ, where he wrote a letter and he wanted it printed. So we did that, and that's kind of when things changed. But kind of almost from the very beginning, I was more the creative, and when he did write, he was more of the more of the study, more of the study side of things. Like he can listen to 5 different versions of Pet Sounds and tell you the difference. I maybe could, but I don't care to. I just want to put the record on and enjoy it. I don't listen for so picking apart musically so that you understand what you're listening to is different than picking apart people's lives and and thinking you know them and have a right to say disparaging things. It's one thing to assume you know somebody and say wonderful things because that's at the very least you're doing something positive. Um, the rest of it's indicative in the society that we live in today and we find ourselves. If Carl Wilson were alive today, he wouldn't have any part of negative anything because this is not who he was. Um, and if Dennis were alive today, I think he would have been all about John Stamos covering his song for Full House because I would imagine that Dennis would be very excited that a song from Sunflower or any song of his would find
Yes,
its way
absolutely.
into popular culture.
People
Um,
are so hard on John Stamos, and I have no idea why. I have no idea.
I think because he tours with Mike. I think again they've decided they don't like Mike. So because John is with Mike, well, we don't like John either. I mean, that's the only thing that I can sort out.
Mm.
Um, that's why in my books, that the book signing you came to, and at each book signing, we read John's foreword and then we follow it with Carney's quote on the back, which
Mhm.
is the Beach Boys touched many people's lives. David Beard touched them. And coming from Brian's daughter, I I do that. I want that said because I want people to understand because Stamos did the foreword. This is not a Mike Love book. This is a balanced thing. This is both. This isn't. John is an Uber fan, just like I'm an Uber fan, just like
Mhm.
you're an Uber fan. I mean, that's what he is. He does a certain thing for a living that allows him to draw more people to the shows and celebrate their music in a way that you and I can't. And that's kind of it. Because of his celebrity, he's able to use his platform to bring more notoriety and attention to their music, which he did. And I'll also say that I think I talked about this at Bookends when you were there. That what would Carl do?
Yep.
And yeah, so if Carl Wilson was involved, it told me all I needed to know.
Mhm.
And I had met Carl enough, and I knew that Carl was somebody that if he did something, he believed in it and he supported it.
Mhm.
And this is his entire career. This wasn't just when Stamos was around. This was, if you look at the entire Beach Boys career and catalog, Carl Wilson always did what he believed in, and he would be involved if he supported what was being done. And so for him to be in the music video for Forever, when John Stamos tells me that Carl was a big supporter, I believe it because he's there. He's in the video. Carl loved John. So if So that's the root of the foundation for me. If Carl Wilson appreciated and cared and loved for John Stamos, then that's all I need to know. That you know, because I've never really heard anybody say anything disparagingly about Carl. Now, imagine, if you will, if in '95 it had been Mike Love who decided that the Beach Boys were only going to record Soul Searching and Still a Mystery. And Mike, and if this is a hypothetical, but if Mike had said, we're not going to record any other Andy Paley, Brian Wilson material because I don't approve. That would be another layer of reason for people to attack Mike Love and to be on Mike, but it wasn't. It was Carl Wilson.
That is so true.
Okay. Well, exactly. But
that's so true.
When I have that discussion with people about Carl being the one who said, or whatever it was, decide that they were going to do Soul Searching and Still a Mystery, but not the other material. And I don't know why Carl didn't feel like any of the other material was interesting or good enough, because the stuff that Brian did with Andy Paley is very good and very interesting to me. That everybody, when we have that discussion, we all kind of pause and we ponder, but nobody's saying that damn Carl Wilson. Nobody. But had that been Mike Love, we would have run him over with a bus multiple times by now.
Run him over with the bus is crazy.
Why? Because we have just decided that Mike Love's a bad guy, and he's not. I mean, my experience, my informed experience, because I've been with him, I have meditated with the man 3 times. He's incredible to my son. He brings my son on stage. I know Mike Love is a sweet human being. So I get it. I mean, I've watched Mike's 1988 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame speech, acceptance speech. I've watched it, and it's uncomfortable. But he's never done anything like that to me. So I don't have a reason to feel anything towards him that's negative. I don't. It's again, why would we accept that Carl canceled the other Andy Paley song? Oh, but we love Carl. But if Mike had done it, with the pitchforks, it's like chasing Frankenstein up the hill. Right? I mean, it's crazy. Just like, it's crazy.
He really is like the, I feel like maybe scapegoat for a lot of things.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's not fair.
Well, but again, I can't speak to what's fair and what's not fair. Mm-hmm. But if we love the music, if we discovered we're Beach Boy fans because we heard a song or an album or whatever it is and we love it, why are we hating any element of it? Because if you're hating any element of something you love, find something else.
Yeah, maybe you don't love it that much.
Then then your heart has lost its way. Because if you love the music, that's it. That's the root of it. And if Mike Love is singing a song that you love, sort it out. Because
I love his vocals on like so many of the classic songs. And speaking of that, crazy segue.
Okay.
What are like your top Beach Boy songs? Someone else was wondering.
Okay, top Beach Boy songs. It's pretty easy for me to do 5. Cabaret. Mm-hmm. Little Girl I Once Knew. Mm-hmm. I'm Waiting for the Day. Mm-hmm. There's going to be more than 5.
That's all right.
At My Window. Our Sweet Love, This Whole World, Add Some Music to Your Day, almost every song off Sunflower. Winds of Change. Sunshine. When Girls Get Together. San Miguel. Busy Doing Nothing. Diamond Head. Lonely Sea.
Yeah, I remember I think you mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah, Till I Die. Till I Die. Well, Lonely Sea and Till I Die, I think, are companion pieces. If you listen to Lonely Sea from '63 and then you listen to Till I Die, they're basically the same emotional branch. I mean, it's tied together. Um, I love Somewhere Near Japan. I like from the Summer in Paradise album. I like the song Elena Aloha that Carl sings. It destroys me inside, and I love it. Uh, what's the other one? She believes in God and karma too, paranormal powers. You know, some people do. Rising. Strange things happen on that
Oh.
album. I like that too. So, but Laena Aloha is Carl singing, "You know I wanted, but I can't stay." And Mike's going, "Bye, bye." When I listen to that song and I hear Carl sing that vocal, I think about him leaving us. Then it kills me. So, but I don't hate him for it.
No.
I love, I love the song.
Yeah.
Because it takes me to Carl. It brings me to Carl,
Yeah.
and I don't care. Uh, um, just Carl, the way he developed. I love the stuff that he did with Jerry Beckley and Robert Lamb, like a brother. Run, Don't Walk. I mean, there's so many. I could just sit here all day and I could just list one song after another, after another, after another that I enjoy. I like um, I like the title of the book, All Summer Long is a great song. Wendy's a great song. Um, Little Honda is a great song. And I particularly love I Get Around. I Get Around is such a whenever I go to a Beach Boys show, and I do it every time. I did it at Brian's Luncheon last year
Mm-hmm.
because they had a little stage set up. So after everybody ate, they were doing a show. Like they did a little mini Wilson Phillips concert, and they were playing. So it's kind of Al and the band that he's touring with right now. And
Mm-hmm.
they were doing I Get Around, so I jumped up and I grabbed Giggins and the two. I said, "Come on, let's go!" And so we're doing the dun, 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 dun. I mean, I do it every time. I do the
That's awesome.
eight measure hand clap because there's no other song like it anywhere. And every time I do it, I think of Brian Wilson.
Yeah,
So,
I think I saw it was like a random interview. It was just like a random person who was with him. I think he was definitely older at the time, and they were asking him what his favorite album was. He said Love You. He probably changed his mind at some point. And then I think he said his favorite song they did was I Get Around. And again, I'm sure that changed, but I thought that was very funny.
well, but it's all great, right? I mean, Brian,
Yeah. I love that song. Like I play the bass and that bass line is like so fun to play. It's
I'll
amazing.
bet so. It's an incredible piece of music. It's and so ambitious
Yeah.
for where they were in their career. I mean, it's just I don't know how he got there, but the fact that he came up with that song
It's incredible.
with the break the way that it breaks, and
Mhm.
it doesn't really lean on the drums. It's got percussion in it, but it doesn't really lean on the drums. And it's interesting how that song was born because it's a case of Mike sitting with Brian. Brian had kind of the working idea of it, and Mike
Mhm.
sat down. They were over at the Marilyn's parents' house, Irving and May Rovell's, and because they always went over there. Um, Brian's home away from home, and they sat beside one another. And Mike said, "Well, why don't we?" Mike was thinking about Barbara Ann, and ba 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 Barbara Ann. So he said, Why don't we start it round round, get around, I get around."
Mhm.
And it's just a great collaboration. And Mike, all these years, I mean, I don't want to go into it, but Brian's dad and Mike's uncle Murray just did a number on that relationship from the very beginning by not crediting Mike. The lawsuit never would have happened years later. Brian never would have had to have his own lawsuit to get his own music back had Murray never sold the catalog. This is all rooted in Murray's actions, and it's deeply unfortunate because everybody wants to talk again. Mike loves a bad guy because he sued Brian. No, he's not. Brian wanted to do it. Brian wanted to restore the music. He didn't. Brian was in complete agreement with Mike. They wanted. I'm pretty sure you can access the court documents online, so you can look at what was said. Brian never disputed whether or not Mike wrote the material. Never. He never disputed it. They were trying to get back control of the catalog, and everybody talks about, and it'll be in the second book, but everybody talks about when Murray sold the catalog, what it did to Brian. And rightly so, because it was devastating to Brian. No one talks about what it did to Mike. Mike co-wrote that material.
Yeah.
That wasn't just Brian's. Now, Brian did all the stuff, because whether it was with Tony Asher, well, it wasn't, it's before that. So it was like Gary Usher, Roger Christian, or Mike, or whoever he wrote it with, that was affected. But Mike was still trying to restore his name to the songs when the catalog was sold. And so that's the, you know, it was devastating all around. Not a single member of that group that was family understood it. You know, Carl never talked about it. Dennis never talked about it, because it was just like the most unfortunate, ugly moment in their family's history. Audrey moved out because she knew she knew Murray was going to do it. And she moved out of the house into her own home because she couldn't be a part of it. It was not accepted. It was not perceived as acceptable behavior by anybody. And it affected all of them. You know, it didn't just affect Brian. It affected everybody. And that's one of the things, if we get into what's fair and what's not fair, you really have to understand the root of a cause and circumstances to understand why something would happen later.
Yeah.
So anybody I've ever talked to about that lawsuit where Mike did what he did to get his name restored, and that's what the lawsuit was. He was trying to get his name restored. He never would have had to do that if the songs had never been sold.
It's very true.
So again, Brian never had a problem with Mike restoring his name.
Mm-hmm.
Never. So, and to your point about articles being online where there's even video of Brian saying, yeah, I don't like Mike, or he's full of ego, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this came up at Bookends, and I said, you know, by a show of hands, who's ever had a dispute with a family member where they didn't talk to them or got upset with them, or, you know, or we ourselves upset a family member by something that we said or did. And it was that, and all of us, we've all been there. We've all been there. The difference being two things. Number one is because they were in business together. They, like most other musical acts, got into music because they love music. Now, Mike needed survival because Mike is just getting divorced when they start out from his first marriage. So from Mike's perspective, yes, it was kind of more job oriented, but there wasn't a point where he wasn't enjoying what they were doing from a creative standpoint and a fun standpoint. And that's why they got into it. They got into it because they happened to have a brilliant songwriter in their midst that they didn't, including Brian, did not even realize. They went into it. They had some ideas about what they wanted to do. Dennis says, do surfing. They do that. They've got Their Hearts Were Full of Spring was really their go-to thing. That would not have broken them. That would not have gotten, that was not enough. They had to have a couple of song ideas going. And so when they worked with the Morgans in the beginning, they had enough going that they could audition themselves, and the Morgans gave them some songs, and then off they went. But it was born out of an innocent desire to be creative, and the love that they had of music. And that's that just never changed, and that's why Brian was never really good at the business side of music business. He never was. There's not a point in their career where you go, oh wow, Brian was really savvy there. No, no, because it was always about Brian's expression and Brian's creativity. We never talk about Brian as a businessman, and there's a reason.
That's very true.
We don't. And nor do we talk about Brian's emotional intelligence, which he had a great deal of.
Yeah.
Uh, he was one of the most. I think Brian Wilson was one of the most emotionally intelligent human beings to ever record music. I mean, Paul McCartney is a very emotionally intelligent person, but Brian was just kind of in a different, not like a better class, but just in a different pocket of stuff that most people can't tap into. And
Yeah.
again, it came from, I think a lot of that came from his life experiences with his father. His
Yeah.
mother was very loving and caring and attentive, and his father was kind of a bully. Um,
Yeah. I think that he can be, from what I've seen, I think that there are great examples to the contrary. Like, I think that the movie, I don't know, I'm sure you've seen it. I think the movie Love and Mercy does a really good job not infantilizing like 60s Brian. Like, I think he's often I've seen in fan spaces, like I feel like sort of like, yeah, like infantilized or sort of seen just for his mental health issues or seen just in that lens, which I think comes on one hand, we're in a generation where, mental health problems are more prevalent than ever. So, in a way, it can be very comforting to know that someone who you look up to has similar experiences to you. I know that I feel that way. Um, but at the same time, it's like it risks um sort of just reducing who he is.
well, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, again, you don't get songs like Fun, 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 and I Get Around, and Surfing USA, and 409, and Shut Down, and Surfing Safari, and any of those, Wendy, All Summer Long, Don't Back Down, all those fun, upbeat songs from a sad person. You
Yeah.
don't. You get that material from somebody who's dialed into the creative process and is happy. I mean, you don't, it's not until he understands how to communicate deeper then, I mean, it does, we get it sprinkled, right? We get In My Room, we get Lonely Sea, we get Surfer Girl, we have
Mhm.
these little sprinkles, but it's not until 65 where he kind of allows it, and he's been doing it long enough that he understands how to communicate it. And consistently, more than just one song, sprinkled here and there. So by the time he gets to today and then Summer Days, again, okay, I'll do Summer Days. I need to buy more time for whatever this other thing I want to do. Um, but even on Summer Days, and Your Dream Comes True is a beautiful, heartfelt recording. He just he was a deep man. He was a deep young man. But that comes from emotional intelligence. And I don't think he was measuring his emotional intelligence. I don't think he was even thinking about his emotional intelligence. I think he was just incredibly emotionally intelligent. You have to be emotionally intelligent to sort out something and then convey it to musicians and then to create it, bring something out of it that just came from an idea. There has to be a level of intelligence to go with that. Not just as a songwriter, producer, and arranger, which he was, but the deeper avenues of self awareness and being able to convey that in recorded format which is why he's just one of a kind.
That's so true. I think that, and especially because I mean, you've spoken with him, like, I don't, how many times, how many, like, just however way you would quantify it, like, how much time have you had with Brian?
Most of my interviews were on the phone. You know, I've had 2 sit downs with him,
Hmm.
and they were awesome. They were
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, you know, he's leaning in, he's smiling. First chapter in the book where they're talking about their high school days.
Hmm.
That was me sitting across from him with a copy of the 1960 Hawthorne yearbook between us.
That's
And
awesome.
I think those photos there's a couple of those photos in the middle of the book.
Yeah, I
And he's
saw them
leaning,
and I just thought they were so sweet.
he's smiling ear to ear, man. He's grinning. He's happy.
Yeah.
He's just so happy in those photos.
Yeah,
Uh,
you and Al and Mike.
yeah, it's just so sitting with Brian. When I didn't get any photos of when the famous story that I tell, which is when I interviewed him after his Pet Sounds show in its entirety in July. I get mixed up. When was the Roxy was 2000? Is that right? I
I
think
don't
so.
know.
Because the Roxy just came out. The Roxy
Forgive
sent it.
me.
But it was after that. That was April, I think, of 2000. I hope I'm remembering that right. And then in July of 2000, Pet Sounds in its entirety, or maybe it was 99. I'm blanking. But April, then July. July, he was doing Pet Sounds in its entirety. It was the last show of the first leg of the tour. They were changing conductors because they had the full orchestra. I sat with Melinda in the middle, right in
That's
front of
so
Brian.
cool.
Geeked out when the train came on at the end. I knew the barking dogs. I had no idea. She laughed at me, deservedly so, because I was geeking out. And then I went backstage and I interviewed Brian and did my Paul McCartney impression for him. And after I was done interviewing him, and he just
Paul
flipped out.
McCartney impression. You can't just
Yeah.
skirt past that.
What? Well, so it's just I've done it so many times.
I would love to hear it.
So, all right. So he knows Paul. So I'm just rehearsing.
Sorry to do this to you.
Okay. So I just did something. So I said, Brian, so we finished our interview and I'm just sitting feet from him with I've got it on tape because I was still recording. And I said, I want to do my Paul McCartney impression for you. And he said, okay. But he was really not sure. It was like, okay, like what does that mean exactly? So then I said, so one morning, you know, I had a melody going about in my head. And I woke up and I smelled breakfast. And out came scrambled eggs. Oh, my darling, how I love your legs. And Brian, those were good legs. And he says 3 things.
That was very good.
He says, that's freaked out. That's unbelievable. That's pretty damn good. We stand up because the interview's over. He gives me a big hug and he leaves. And I'm just like, ah.
Yes, that must have been like the world. I would have freaked out so hard.
So that was it, man. I thought, oh my God, I got Brian to smile. He gave me a hug.
You.
He complimented me and he gave me a hug. And I just
That's
was
amazing.
like, oh my God. It was like the moment for me. But that was in 2000. And then, 5 years later, I'm sitting in with him with a yearbook. And he was just, in both of those interviews, he was just so on and so into it. And I count myself very lucky because, when he decided that he was interested in talking to you, he was in. I mean, and I got to do that, and I've interviewed him on the phone lots of times, but it just was not the same as sitting with him. I can remember talking to him. Oh, the Roxy and the Pet Sounds, that was 1999, because I remember in the fall of 1999, Smile wasn't even being talked about yet. But I got on the phone with him for 15 minutes to talk about Cabanescence. And he actually talked to me about it. It was not a Smile conversation. We talked about Cabanescence. Yes.
Was it that he wasn't willing to talk about Smile? Or
yeah, Smile was just not something anybody spoke to him about.
Was it just like touchy?
I can't speak to that. I just know it wasn't spoken about. So I didn't have a Smile conversation with him. I had a Evanescence conversation with him. And he seemed to be into that. But I started the conversation. This was after I'd done my Paul McCartney impression for him in person, because I was like, how do I get him warmed up? Because that was my whole thing back in the beginning, is I would tell jokes before I would start the interview. Like with Mike and Al, I would try to do something lighthearted, because like I remember I was in Mike's hotel room in December of '99 and talking to him about, I knew I would be talking about Carl and his passing away. So I knew that that would be somewhat of a somber conversation. So I started with a joke because I wanted to put him at ease. Um, so that's something I did often. So I got Brian on the phone to talk about Evanescence, and nobody knew what I was going to talk to him about. They just knew that I wanted to talk to him. So he got on the phone, and I started with, hello again, Brian. It's Paul. It's calling up for a chat. I said, I think I might call myself on the phone so I can say hello, Paul. It's Paul. And he went, ha! That's funny.
You do a pretty good Brian too, I gotta say. Also, I wanted to ask, so was it 2003 when Brian did the full Smile concert?
I think, yeah, he started it at Royal Albert Hall overseas, I guess, 2000. Well, the album came out in '04, so I would think it would be '04 that happened.
Oh,
But I
probably it was '04.
could be wrong. I didn't go to that. So, I mean, I did see the Smile performance down at Chastain, and that was interesting because it was a part of a summer concert series. I don't even know what your question is, but it was a part of the summer concert series. And it was weird because, and this is the same place that I saw him do Pet Sounds. I saw many memorable shows at Chastain with them, either Mike's show or their reunion tour. I saw them there. Lots of memories from that venue. But he did it, and it was the Wine and Cheese crowd. Like they had bought summer series, concert series tickets. Like Michael McDonald was an act from the Doobie Brothers. It was like this whole summer concert series. So they came out. You could tell the Wine and Cheese crowd with their fancy picnic tables and whatnot. And they were, look at people here to see the Beach Boy,
The Beach
and then
Boy.
like the first set was these hit songs, and they come out to do the second set, and they've got the flame tapestry in the front while he's doing Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. None of these Wine and Cheese people have any idea what they're watching, and they all start to get up and leave.
Really?
Yep. They just leave. And I just was like, wow. See, so that kind of told and indicated to me, had Smile been completed back in '67, I think it just would have been an art piece, like just similar to Pet Sounds with McCartney and how much he loved it. I think again, you would have had every musical peer going, holy crap, what is this? And how is this possible? And never even in my mind would I have even come up with a song about a fire or something, because it just, people didn't think that way. I'm a recording artist. I'm going to write a song about something relatable. Again, this goes to the Mike love story. Mike is such a bad person because he wanted Brian to write about things that were relatable to their fan base. I mean, oh my God.
Unthinkable.
How could he? So again, I really wish that Brian's ambition at that time would have been something where he would have persevered and just put it out and had said to Capitol Records, you're going to wait for me to finish this record, just the same way that you waited for me to finish Good Vibrations. And it's either, and do not put out Best of Beach Boys Volume 2 right after I release this record. The same way they did with Beach Boys, Best of Beach Boys Volume 1. Pet Sounds comes out May 16th, July 5th. Capitol Records releases Best of the Beach Boys. So
that's just ridiculous.
It's you have to allow art to breathe.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Smile would have been, but is it any stranger than what Smiley Smile was?
Yeah. So with Smiley Smile, I understand it's just sort of like, was it sort of, this sort of little gap in my knowledge, of which there are many, but with Smiley Smile, it's sort of like, we can't get Smile out. here's something else.
I don't know who came up with the name for the record. Um,
It's
that
interesting.
and I don't know that that's ever been spoke of. Which is weird. But book two does pick up in June of '67 with the Smiley Smile album. Um, and what's unique about that record is Brian Murray bought Brian the Baldwin organ that he plays throughout that record. That was a gift from Murray to Brian. So Murray's presence is on that album. So when I listen to that, when I listen to anything and I have an understanding of why, like Good Vibrations, really well-known song, happens
Yeah.
because Audrey says dogs pick up vibrations.
Mhm.
So to this day, Audrey Wilson is present for me. She's present in the Beach Boys catalog. Every time I see the term "good vibes" or or I
Mhm.
hear the song, I think of Audrey Wilson. Um, so their touch is there and their effect is there, and it's everlasting to me. So again, I think about the entire family most times when I listen to any of their music because it's all tied together. It is a family story, but it goes beyond just the members of the group. It goes deep into the entire family. I mean, Murray's sister was Mike's mother. Um, so and they had a really rough childhood because their father was worse than Murray. Um, from what I've read, so that doesn't make it factual. But Timothy White's The Nearest Faraway Place covers that, and that's a very good book. It gets into that. So I'm sorry, I don't remember where we started with this, but
That's okay.
Smiley Smile is just a different type of expression. It's
Mhm.
it's you know it's Brian. I don't know why he thought that was okay to release, but didn't feel that Smile was not okay to release. That's confusing to me because
Yeah.
She's Going Bald is a strange song. Woody Woodpecker's symphony, Fall Breaks and Back to Winter, is fascinating to me, but it
Mhm.
was derived from Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. So if that's okay, why wasn't the other okay?
Yeah. What do you
So that
think
that's what I
the
don't understand.
Yeah. What do you think with Smile? I'm curious to know about what because I think when people talk about it or a lot of things, they really think about like Brian, and some people kind of act like no one else exists or no one else had anything to do with anything. But yeah, I'm definitely curious about what the other members' involvement was in the creation of Smile, and also just generally what you think or what might have led to its not being able to come out, because that's always been a question in the.
Then that's why it's covered in the book.
Mhm.
Brian says he didn't think it was ready. And really the truth of the matter was the album wasn't finished. So the part of the question is, why didn't Brian finish the album? Well, he says and has said, not just to me, but to multiple people, he thought it was ahead of its time. Well, of course it was ahead of its time. He was Brian Wilson. Everything he was doing was ahead of his time. It didn't stop him from Pet Sounds, but Pet Sounds didn't get the reception that he wanted.
Mhm.
So he began to question himself. Then Good Vibrations comes along. It's a number one hit. It's a smash. It changes the way it changes music. I mean, it's something that nobody else had done. And so why he didn't have more confidence in what he was doing and how he was doing it, and it didn't really matter what anybody else had to say, is a quandary to me because he should have just told Capitol, hold your horses. You're going to get the product when I'm done with the product. He could have said to Mike, if Mike was saying, what does over and over the crow cries and cover the cornfield mean? He said, Mike, it's just really not that important. I think this is an artistic record. This is what Van Dyke and I are doing. You know,
Mhm.
Mike sang on everything he was asked to sing on. So again, that's all you need to know.
That's
It's
true.
another one of those moments, like, oh, Mike was so opposed to this and that, he caused this.
Mhm.
No, no, no. he may have questioned things, but that was the relationship he had with his cousin.
Yeah.
His cousin trusted his perspective. So much so, also covered in the book, when they're doing Hang On to Your Ego, Mike sings it.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says to Brian, I think we need to make this more relatable. And Brian, Mike, and Al all speak to that in the book.
See, I'm very interested to get to that. I'm so excited to like really, crack this open and read it.
The Pet Sounds chapter is like the longest one in the entire book, and it's full of stuff that no one's ever pulled together. Like I did, the Tony Asher interviews never been printed before. So it was important to bring this all together, to really not put proper perspective on it, because the music is the music, and however it reaches you is your own subjective experience. It's not trying to change that. It's trying to provide information in such a way that you feel informed. If you're wanting to know more about the creative process and to know the people behind the creative process and understand their feelings about it at the time. Because if you and I if we're just sitting in a room right now and talking about this, people would say, "Oh, that Mike loves, blah 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 blah." And I'll say, "Well, okay, well let's look at this page together in this book where Brian, Mike, and Al all say the same thing about I know there's an answer, and Brian and Al are both saying what Mike did was appropriate." So
yeah,
he's such a bad guy. If he's such a bad guy, why is Brian saying that the lyric change was correct?
It's very strange that people sort of take it upon themselves. It's like, number one, this isn't even like, if anything even happened, it's not your thing to be upset about, number one. And number two, like, it really is like, we got to learn to mind our own business for real. Also,
I understand the hunger to learn more.
Yeah.
But that's what books are for.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's what books are for. And it's available digitally as a Kindle. It's available as an audio. You can listen to it.
I saw that.
And it's available as a hardcover if you're like me and you like the good old-fashioned book. But that's what these books are for. And by these, I mean all these like back here. I mean all the Beach Boys books that are about the Beach Boys and their careers are worth looking into and worth finding out about. Mike's book, Good Vibrations, My Life as a Beach Boy, is a great book, available as audio, as read by Mike. Brian Wilson's I Am Brian Wilson is a wonderful book. Jim Murphy's Becoming the Beach Boys is an incredible book. Timothy White's The Nearest Faraway Place. Peter Aim Carlin's Catch a Wave. David Leaf's books. I think should be a part of everyone's collection. But what I will say about David's books, and he knows this, I was on a different Zoom last night talking about this. I think David Leaf's writing is great. He's a great writer, and he provides great insight, and he's done a lot of great work. My concern, my problem, I guess is the right word, with him is that he wrote a book called Beach Boys and the California Myth. And I remember buying the first volume, which came out in '78, and thinking to myself, oh, this is a book that could have been called Brian Wilson and the Five Assholes. I mean,
that's crazy.
I mean, that's how they're portrayed in it.
He went after everyone. That's crazy.
It's just because of his love for Brian. Everybody else is kind of diminished. You were touching on it earlier that Brian's the guy and everybody else is just lucky to be there. You know, if they were just lucky to be there,
Pacific Ocean Blue wouldn't have come out in that case if they weren't all amazing.
No, I mean, so they're not really understanding. Again, Brian, let's just say we're talking about Pet Sounds or Smile, or in that era. Brian started to use the LA musicians, the great LA musicians, who would be later known as the Wrecking Crew because of Hal Blaine's book. He was using them because the Beach Boys were touring. Brian enjoyed using the guys. They played on most of the Shutdown. All of them played most of the Shutdown Volume 2 and most of All Summer Long. because he wanted them. He preferred to have them. But when he discovered what the LA musicians could do, he thought, well, okay, they're on tour. I can just do sessions and keep up with my imagination and get these things recorded. So when they come back from touring, all I really have to do is plug them in vocally. And that became tricky, and this isn't the only group it happened to, but as the songs got more developed with more things going on in them, it made it more difficult for the Beach Boys to recreate them live because there's more going on. Like they had to create their own version of the electro theremin so that Mike could play the, on stage because they didn't. You can't take a theremin out where you run your fingers in between the space to make the.
It's hard.
I can't imagine Mike. So they created this little thing for him, this little ribbon controller for him to do it, and it worked. But had they not had that, Good Vibrations Live would have sounded kind of weird.
You'd also have to pay a lot of people to do a lot of the Pet Sounds stuff because it is like lush orchestrally.
Yeah.
I also heard someone say once, and I really like this interpretation in a way. Like someone said that Pet Sounds is so it's so big and instrumental and beautiful, and they're like, and that perfectly captures how intense the feelings of love, of sadness, all those things are when you're that age. Because I'm thinking about they were my age when they were making this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just little babies. Like you don't think about it. Like the Beatles were my age too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that is so true. Like you're still not fully mature. And, so I think I'm at the perfect time in my life to really resonate with the feelings in that music. Like it's just unbelievable. And I love the timpanis. It's my life is over. I'm in love. It's crazy.
So
it's beautiful stuff.
It is beautiful stuff. And so they were supportive. There was, Carl would, he was the one member of the group that upon returning from touring, he would plug his lead guitar, sometimes his 12 string, into the board directly. He'd be in the booth and he would play with the musicians, but he was really the only one. But that's not because Brian preferred it that way. Again, it was really a symptom of the circumstances. They're on tour. I'm going to work on the music that I've gotten myself out of touring now. I can stay home and do what I want to do, and create. And they know when they come back, there's going to be new stuff for them to do. And that became the regimen. That was the agreement. And it was also an agreement for them that they would collect equal money. So even though Brian wasn't touring, at that time in their careers, equal money. So from record sales or what got paid on tour, Brian got equal. Everybody was getting equal money. So that was a time when it was, for Mike, it wasn't preferred because he wanted Brian on the road with him because he enjoyed Brian's company. And if Brian were on the road with him, then they could come up with songwriting ideas while they were touring together.
That's true.
So when Brian stopped touring, that opportunity for Mike went away. And I think that's why Pet Sounds became the album that it did with mostly Tony Asher. And I'm Waiting for the Day is Mike and Brian co-write, and I think that's from 64. That dates back to 64. Is when that song originated. So it wasn't like they wrote a brand new song together. And then, but you can't complain about the results. So I think I'm getting off track, but Mike sang on everything. They all sang on they sang on anything Brian asked them to sing on. So if they were truly opposed, they simply wouldn't, you wouldn't hear their voices on the tracks. So that's, again, it's all you need to know, because the same thing with Carl, right? So if Carl did it, that's all I need to know. So if their voices are on the music, or on the songs, or on the recordings, that's all I need to know. So Bruce is not really on Smiley Smile because he walked away because he said it got too weird.
Interesting. And no one's mad at him for that either.
No, nobody's mad at Bruce, but if Mike had done it.
Of course. But also, I wanted to ask, so obviously Brian took a long time off touring, but so you were, I know you were alive for the Brian is back era. Were you like in the like fandom yet? Just like how was that for you?
No,
Or
I
like
was not
looking back
alive.
on
I
that?
was not. I mean, I was alive, but I was not into.
Mm,
I think I became aware of rock and roll music. I remember in '76. I remember the bicentennial pretty well. I remember sleeping out in my backyard in New York. I remember listening to Kiss records. All my friends in New York we were all listening to Kiss. And I remember listening to Hotel California, the Eagles album, and thinking that was really interesting. The whole, as a teenager, think, or it was like 12 years old or something, and I was listening to this song that said you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And I'm like, what? What? No.
what is that about?
What? What?
Yeah.
Huh? What's going on? So, I mean, I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I remember listening to that song going, I don't quite understand. But I remember the bicentennial party in my neighborhood in New York. I do to this day. Not vivid, but echoes of it. So I do remember rock and roll music being something by the Beach Boys at that time. Again, not realizing it was a Chuck Berry song or anything
Mhm.
like that. Just that it was a Beach Boys song. It was on the radio. Um, that's kind of about what I remember of it. I was not aware of any Brian's Back campaign or anything like that. I didn't discover the genre until I moved to Charlotte in
Mhm.
January '79. It would be after that that I would discover the genre.
Yeah.
So,
I
not,
just remember the Brian is back era being very cute. I It's something that gives me a lot of happiness. Like the song by Mike Love, I'm like, it's so cheesy, but it's so perfect for it. It's so nice.
well,
Also, when did one album I'm actually randomly dying to ask you about is I don't hear people talking about it, and that's why I want your perspective on it so desperately. What do you think about the Beach Boys' Love You?
well, gosh, I think that people talk about that all the time.
Or I think maybe in my circles, I don't hear about it a lot.
Oh, oh. Well, I think the We Got a Groove box set will hopefully expose more people to it.
Mhm.
The Love You album for me is I like that it's a snapshot of Brian Wilson at that time in his life.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much for me musically. I like it. Um, but if I have a 1977 album to listen to by a member of the Beach Boys that does something for me, it's Pacific Ocean Blue. Uh,
Absolutely.
so that, I would have really liked for Pacific Ocean Blue to have been a Beach Boys album in
Mhm.
1977.
It should have been. I think it would have gone down as like
It,
legendary. It's just
yes,
incredible.
yes, it is an incredible record. And if you take maybe The Night Was So Young, Ding
Mhm.
Dang, and a couple of
Mhm.
other tracks, and you put them over on Pacific Ocean
Mhm.
Blue, and you add Beach Boys vocals to Pacific Ocean Blue. I mean, Mike co-wrote Pacific Ocean Blues with
Mhm.
Dennis. You've got an important record, an
Yeah.
important artistic statement. Um,
Yeah.
I don't dislike Love You. I mean, I don't dislike anything in the catalog. But what for me, it's do I connect to the music? What's my connection to the music when I listen to it? Love You is kind of when I listen to it, I enjoy it, but it's again, The Night Was So Young, I think is my favorite
Mhm.
off of that record. Um, I like the humor of Ding Dang.
Mhm.
I like Honking Down the Highway. I mean, I like it. I just as a full album listening experience, it's enjoyable, but
Mhm.
it's not any more, I'll catch hell for this. It's not any more important to me musically than the MIU album is.
Mhm. That's real.
In terms
I
of a
think,
listening experience,
yeah.
but in terms of Love You being more important than any of that era, it's important because we see the snapshot of who Brian Wilson is. But
Yeah.
um,
I think
the
that's what really fascinates me about it. And I think it's also from a music production perspective and from a music creating perspective. Like, I think I'm so amazed by how forward thinking it is in terms of like using synths and like
oh
the
yeah.
fact that if you played it for someone, some people wouldn't even know that's a Beach Boys album at all, like, and just how brave and how daring it is. Like, I just think it's like so incredible, and like in that sense. But then it's like I'll look at lyrics and I'm like, I don't understand this. Like, Roller Skating Child is such an anomaly to me, but it is a snapshot, and I think I like that. It's so honest, and it's so honest that you're not always going to get everything about it, you know?
Well, yeah, it's the perfect snapshot of who Brian Wilson was in that moment. It's it's a record like Smiley Smile. People listen to Smiley Smile and they go, "This is the Beach Boys." There's lots of that. People listen to Carl and the Passion and they go, "This is the Beach Boys." So there's lots of that in their career.
I love that about the Beach Boys in particular. Like, there's a point that comes when, like, I think that's what a lot of young people are liking, is when you realize, like, wait a minute, they're kind of interesting and like different and kind of weird, and it's like it's a constant surprises. I also had someone ask me, definitely partially joking, whether you prefer 15 Big Ones or the MIU album. I think they were just like
Oh,
Battle of the
well,
Mid.
I guess 15 big ones. I don't really have a preference. I really think of 15 big ones, Love You, MIU, and LA as kind of, well, no, not even LA. LA kind of goes into the keeping the summer alive thing.
Hmm.
But 15 big ones, Love You, MIU is kind of an extension of one another. I don't really, the same way that I think of Smiley Smile, Wild Honey, and Friends is an extension of one another. Um, and to me, I think of Pacific Ocean Blue and LA and Keeping the Summer Alive as extensions of one another. So
Yeah.
it's not so much when was the product released for me. It's more about the listening experience and what the music does and how the music
Hmm.
feels. Because Sunflower, Surfs Up, and Holland have a connectivity to them for me. Um, so well, and Carl and the Passions. Well, no, Carl and the Passions and Holland have a deeper connectivity, and Sunflower and Surfs Up have a deeper connectivity.
Hmm.
Like those two could be, both of those could be two record sets. You know,
Yeah. And I heard you earlier say something about Surf's Up, about how you would prefer that things didn't go a certain way with that record, or
yeah.
yeah, what's like
Oh
your
yeah,
stance on that? I'm
I wish
curious.
I number one, I wish it had been called Surfs Up.
Hmm.
Um, it could have been called Feel Flows. It could have been called
Hmm.
Long Promised Road.
Hmm.
Um, but clearly the idea was we have to put this smile track on this record and call the record Surfs Up.
Yeah.
we, we have to do that.
I
Uh,
think I actually, well, first of all, I love, not to disagree with you, I love the cover, number one. I think it's like,
well, the cover art's great.
it's beautiful. It's like, it's kind of like, to me it almost looks like, yeah, it's like dark and gloomy, and even Surfs Up, I see that and I don't necessarily think of like Surfs Up like we're back to the old times. Like, it's almost like Surfs Up, like it's over. Like, that's almost how I take it.
And then that's dry land. When you pull out the insert, it's just this cracked, dried land. To
Yeah.
your point. I just Dennis's "Wouldn't It Be Nice to Live Again" is not on that record. I which is a quandary to me. Dennis
Hmm.
and Carl had a discussion. Dennis wanted it on the record. Carl said no. Dennis wanted to close the album with that. Carl
Hmm.
said no, so Dennis kept it. And it's such an incredible recording. Um, so I would have rather that. Um, been on the album. It's because it's an incredible track, but that's we get into the what ifs and things like
Hmm.
that. It is what it is. I think if Dennis's song had been on there, it would have been more like Sunflower.
Hmm.
And that's what I love so much about Sunflower is the amount of Dennis Wilson material.
He had an amazing output, and like he really was like I feel like a very unsung hero within the group. Also, just like being super supportive, like of Brian and everything. And it's like they had like their sessions together and everything. So I think that's awesome. Also, I wanted to ask you like two more questions. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
Well, I don't want to keep you too long, but like this is really like such an honor, and it's been so cool to hear from you. I just don't want to keep you too long. But I wanted to ask you about um I have this one question that I got that I thought was very interesting. So it says, with the growth of sort of Beach Boys related podcasts and YouTube channels, one of which you are on currently, how has that, or has that changed the way that you approach writing the newsletter, sort of engaging in what you do? And has the greater visibility been positive or negative as we've talked about sort of certain narratives coming up? Like what is the rise of the Beach Boys internet been like for you?
Well, one word that comes to mind is diluted. Um,
Mm,
I just, it's all another word that comes to mind is it's encouraging. Um, I like that there are so many fans from so many generations that are into this group. It's important, it's great music. There's a lot to discover. Uh, again, to our earlier part of our conversation, if anybody's spending a time on their podcast talking down about a member or talking down about an album because they don't care about it, if you don't like the album, why are you talking about it?
mm-hmm.
It's, you know, find what you love and talk about what you love. Um, and so that's it for that. I mean, that's so if I see something and um, and I feel as though a podcast or a person, well, in particular, such as yourself, because you were at the book signing, and I love that you were as young as you are because it was encouraging to me, and that your question about Mike and Brian's relationship it didn't seem like you were asking it to get dirt on it. You were asking it because you wanted to understand it.
No, I
Uh,
think that's incredibly uncharitable. And I mean, personally, like, as like I'm Catholic, and it's like I have like a kind of conviction about that, where I'm just sort of like, I don't want to talk bad about other people. I don't enjoy whipping up things, I'm like, these are old or not alive anymore men. I do not know. So it's really not my business to be like they hated each other. Like that's no fun. But I appreciate you saying that. It was a really fun book signing.
so I enjoy seeing young positive energy because Giggins is a great young positive energy. Well, yeah, I should say younger than me. So I mean, I think he's in his 30s. I think it's great when there's a younger energy who wants to celebrate um, this group and this great music because that's the point.
Mhm.
For me, I've been doing it for over 32 years, and I like seeing young interest. Just as I would imagine that the guys are happy when they're performing on stage and they look out into the audience and they see grandparents with their grandchildren and maybe great grandchildren in some cases. So that's all good. So that's kind of my feeling towards it is if someone's bringing a positive, true, explorative nature to what they're trying to understand and what they're trying to learn, um, I would certainly say it's fair to say that they can start with this book of mine.
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely.
set them on their way to understanding the period of these early recordings. And if they're not into the earlier period so much, it'll still set the stage for what's to follow in my multi-volume books. I
I
mean,
can't wait for those, by
gonna
the
be
way.
probably four all told,
Mhm.
because I have that much content. Um, so the next one I think I'm going to call "Do It Again." Further discussions with the Beach Boys from Smiley Smile to either 15 Big Ones or Love You, depending on word count. I got a whole chapter in there about the Radiant Radish that just
Oh my gosh, right. The Radiant Radish.
I have a whole chapter in with Captain and Tennille
That's awesome.
with because they were in the touring band um, before they became Captain and Tennille. So it's a lot of history. It's a lot of I just got done work. Well, I'm still working on it, but I'm working on pulling together the chapter of 75, 74, 75 with my interviews with Jim Gershio, Robert Lamb, Peter Cetera, and Walt Parazater from the group Chicago. And Walt just passed away.
Hmm.
And so again, this is living voices, giving these allowing these voices to live on, tell their story, talk about their experiences, and I keep looking at it and going, oh my gosh, that's right, I did this too, because I'm pulling them together and putting it into one book. It's fascinating. I mean, I've got a chapter called "A Day at the Ranch," which is from somebody I've never printed her interview. But she was there the day they did the Sunflower photo album cover shoot because
Wow.
she knew Ricky Martin and it was Dean Martin's ranch. So she went with Ricky. She was a photographer. So I've got photos that have never been seen before from the photo shoot for the
That's
Sunflower album
crazy.
cover. So again, these are just these little incremental things that are a part of this great, big, vast recordings. I mean, that are all these other things that these ancillary characters, these people, these, in some cases, integral figures in their story. I mean, Daryl Dragon, who would become captain of Captain and Tennille, he was integral to Dennis's songwriting development. He co-wrote all that material. He was kind of the Salieri to Mozart. He helped steer Dennis to finish the songs, and he would be the one taking the notes because Dennis didn't do that.
Hmm.
Dennis would just sit down and do it, and Daryl had to keep up and write the stuff down so that there'd be a
So yeah,
con.
like Mozart and Salieri.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny.
That's exactly what.
Another two historical figures who are often seen as hating each other more than they really did.
Well, yeah.
What a fun coincidence.
So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be in the second book, and then the third book.
Hmm.
Um, and again, I don't know where they're gonna. I want to call the third book "Winds of Change."
Hmm.
Um, continued conversations with the Beach Boys from "Love You" to whatever.
Hmm.
Again, depending on the cutoff of the word count. And then there'll be a fourth book. I don't know. I don't know if I'll call it "Still Cruising" or what I'll do. I don't know yet because I'm not that far down the road.
Hmm.
Road. But
How long did it take you to finish this one?
it was about a year and a half.
Wow, that's crazy. Also, I really like the cover. I was like, oh, thank goodness this book is pretty. Like,
So
because I
one
like
of the
having
things,
pretty books on my shelf.
here's a funny coincidence. This would be like a trivia question that nobody would know.
Hmm.
Pete Mondrian, who created that art style, the colored blocks, was a Dutch
Hmm.
painter, and he and I have the same birthday,
When's your birthday?
March 7th. I didn't know that until I did a previous Zoom, and I can't remember who I did it with. But maybe it was I don't recall, but I referenced him because back in the '60s, everybody used that style. I mean, the
Hmm.
Beatles was it the Beatles for sale? I don't remember which one, but they used the blocks. Like
I
a
would say like
lot of groups did.
can't buy me love or
Yeah, I don't. I can see it in my mind, but I can't
that
recall.
era.
Beatle number ones. I don't remember. But they used the
Maybe a
blocks.
hard day's night.
No, it wasn't that. But
No, because I'm
but
thinking of like the blue, like the strips. But yeah, I'm like,
no, but there was an album cover they did that had the colored blocks.
I think I know what you're talking
Like
about.
all groups did, like many groups did but that was Pete Mondrian's style. And so I went in, I decided on the name. I said I wanted to look like the All Summer Long cover. So
Mhm.
all along, I didn't realize that I was designing something that somebody I shared a birthday with.
That's so great. That's awesome.
So it's just kind of a weird little nugget of coincidence.
Hmm. All right, so I want to ask you one last question. In this book, you have this Pet Sounds chapter, which has been getting a lot of hype from you as having some things that are just like totally exclusive to this. No one's really ever talked about it. And what I just wanted to ask as our final question is if you could just give us, not necessarily maybe the juiciest thing, you probably want to save that for us when we read, but just if you have any one thing you'd like to share that you found out from these interviews about the making of Pet Sounds that you found particularly interesting.
Well, there's two things in the book that I'll just paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me to read it, and then nobody would have a reason to get it.
Mm-hmm.
One is there always seemed to be I think controversy is too strong of a word, but there's always been a lot said about uh, Mike and Brian's relationship and how Mike had an opinion about the music. So in the chapter, Brian, Mike, and I'll all talk about the song I Know There's an Answer, which originally started as Hang On to Your Ego. And so that's why I thought it was I really wanted, I didn't want just Mike and Al talking about that. I also wanted Brian talking about that. Because if you just hear from Mike and Al, then the perspective by the reader is going to be, well, I'm sure Brian wanted it to be Hang On to Your Ego
Mm-hmm.
without Brian having a say. And so for Mike, Brian, and Al all to say that what Mike did lyrically was appropriate for the song, that adds value because Brian agrees. And it's not like, hey Brian, my question isn't, hey Brian, don't you agree that what Mike did was right?
Mm-hmm.
I know not to ask Brian those types of questions. So that's not how I formed it to him. I allowed him to say what he felt was right or wrong, which he does. So a lot's been made about that because I guess that's the time that famously Mike supposedly said, "Don't f with the formula,"
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
and but that never happened. Now
Mm-hmm.
he may have had a discussion with Brian where he was questioning what some of the content was lyrically. Um, I wasn't there. I don't know what discussions Mike and Brian had in between albums when Brian stopped touring and what type of agreement they had in place. I mean, it's in the book. They had an agreement in place when it came to touring and how the money was distributed, but we don't know. And I just never got to the question, or I think I asked Mike something along the lines of what type of agreement was in place during the Smile conversation about the songwriting, because I had read, uh, and I know not to go by other books. I mean, I can read other books and discern what's being said to decide how I want to form my questions. Um, and one of the things was that Mike was, you know, against Pet Sounds. And that they had some sort of agreement in place that once Pet Sounds came out and Mike talked to Brian, that the two of them agreed that the next album was going to be an album where Mike got to write the material. And Mike didn't remember that discussion. And I think there's a little bit about it in the book. It's been a while since I looked at it, but Brian even, I asked him that and he doesn't remember that type of discussion. So then the question becomes, well, where'd that come from? Who put that in their book and who created that narrative that Mike and Brian had something in place. So Mike was really angry when Brian got Van Dyke Parks. And Mike never disliked Van. So see, this is what happens with the storyline. People then get a sense because Mike said to Van Dyke, "What the heck does over and over the crow cries uncover the cornfield means?" At no time in that line of questioning is Mike saying to Van Dyke, "I don't like you." So there's a big difference between questioning lyrics and having an uncertainty when you know that you have a specific audience that's buying your records, but not realizing, and this is nobody's fault, again, so I don't look at fault. I look at the broad big picture of everything. No one knew. No one. Brian didn't know he was ahead of his time. The Beach Boys didn't realize, and this includes Brian, who was back at home. He had more access to the radio on a daily basis because the Beach Boys were touring. They might hear something that's on the radio, depending if they're in a hotel room or in transit from wherever they're staying to the venue they're performing in, or if somebody has a transistor radio backstage. But the likelihood of the Beach Boys hearing the new music of the time in real time was less likely than Brian, because Brian was at home and Brian could turn on the radio any old time he wanted to. But the likelihood of Brian hearing new music every moment of every day was not that likely, because Brian was so creative and trying so hard with creating new stuff that he was, coming up with all of these ideas. And certainly by 68 and Friends, you do realize that Brian was influenced by Bacharach and possibly to a degree Carlos Jobim, by jazz and bossa nova, and those types of things, because you can hear it. But Pet Sounds, Brian was ahead. He was ahead of everybody. And Smile, he was ahead of everybody. With Good Vibrations, which took place between those two albums, he was ahead of everybody. So none of the Beach Boys, whether they agreed with what Brian was doing or not, or questioned the lyrics, were against him. So again, I think that's the narrative that gets kind of really grayed and fuzzied and completely misrepresented in their career. Mike never hated Tony Asher. He never hated Van Dyke Parks. He, as the person on stage, and Carl related to this as much as Mike did, but Carl was, I think, just amazed by his brother. So he wasn't really so much vocal about the changes, because Carl approached it from a musical sense. Carl was a guitar player. So he would be the one member of the group who'd come back from touring, find out when Brian needed him in the studio, and then he'd sit in the booth and plug his electric guitar right into the board. And so he was typically the only member of the group, the touring band, that was a part of those recording sessions when he was. So, but I think Carl wanted to do that because it was important to Carl to understand how to recreate the music live. And so that was very important, because what Brian was doing, and this happened with the Moody Blues and other groups, and the Beatles knew to kind of stop touring, because they knew that their music was going to become more developed. They had a sense of where they were going, and they were sick of touring, and they weren't. The Beatles' whole situation was they didn't want to tour anymore because they couldn't hear themselves. So they thought, well, what's the point? And that opened the door to them to just being as creative as they possibly wanted to. Everything from their album covers to the music in the albums, because they knew they weren't going to be touring. So the idea of having to recreate the music live wasn't even a thing. I mean, Brian, in October of 66, when Good Vibrations was released, he flew to Michigan with the band, rehearsed with them. There's photos of it. So he's standing in front of them on the stage, facing him during sound check, and he's going over Good Vibrations with them so they can recreate it. So some of the questioning, if it wasn't lyrical questioning from Mike, this had to be something going on in their minds from the standpoint of, this is really elaborate stuff, either the vocally elaborate or musically elaborate. How are we as a 5-piece band going to replicate it on stage successfully?
I think this shows my ignorance a little bit, but it seems like the Beach Boys toured just like forever. Like, was there any time where they really stopped for like a substantial period?
There's a couple of spots. They in 68 had to end up canceling some tour dates because two things happened. One, they booked Maharishi as their opening act. And so concert goers who were expecting to experience music had a guy meditating on stage in front of them, and they didn't know what to make of that, and that didn't go over well because they were there to listen to and experience music. So a lot of those shows got canceled. Another thing happened was the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and they were doing a stint in his area, and so all the shows that they had scheduled ended up getting canceled. And both of those things happened in '68, not very far apart from one another. So that affected things for them. For the most part, they just kept touring, and because that's any artist's bread and butter. Record sales are not an artist's bread and butter, unless you're smart when you go into the music business, like ABBA and like Bob Gaudio or the Four Seasons, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Bob Gaudio knew what he was doing the second he walked in and joined that group. He knew how to publish. He knew ancillary licensing. He knew all about all that stuff. Now, I don't know what School of Hard Knocks he went to learn those things to be there by the time he met Frankie Valli, but he knew when he walked in the door, and that's covered in that great film Jersey Boys.
Oh, I love that movie.
Well, see, Bob Gaudio walked in the door knowing what he was doing, and so he understood licensing the day they met. So we don't know his story prior to that, though. And ABBA, I don't know how long it took them, but from the very early days of their careers, they had their own label, they had their own songwriting, licensing thing, everything. So that's why they have the rights to the music. Now, Taylor Swift is a good example for you because she experienced the whole mess, and so she re-recorded all her albums so that she would have property of them. See, so most artists don't know to do something like that, but that was brilliant for her to have done that. So she said, you do what you want with my older stuff. I'm going to re-record them and re-release them, and then you're not going to be able to touch them. And that was really wise of her to do that. So this goes all back to the business of the music to a degree. Also, when Brian was coming out with more and more, I mean, there's a big difference between 409 and Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Yeah, absolutely.
So they have to recreate that. So there's more to just Mike questioning lyrical content, because the Pet Sounds album is a relationship album. So the only questioning that Mike would have had at that time was, you're working with a jingle writer? I thought we were going to do this together. But Mike would not, I've never heard why would he say don't F with the formula to an album that's a relationship album when everything up until that point in the Beach Boys' career was about relationships? It was a relationship with a car, it was a relationship with a girl. So none of the content
lots of car songs.
Yeah. But so none of the content on Pet Sounds, with the exception of maybe the self-reflective nature of a great deal of that material that Brian allowed to kind of find its way to the recorded format. That's the only difference, but that was the relationship kind of more or less with self, right? But it's still relationship music. And the big thing with the Pet Sounds chapter is having a discussion with Tony Asher. Because for me to ask him in May of 2005, you wrote the words. People always think they know who Brian Wilson is when they know you. You wrote the words. And he paused and he looked at me and said, nobody's ever asked me that. And that just floored me. This is 39 years into the album's existence. I mean, how do people not put that together? So that's the other thing. So having both Tony and Brian discuss that, again, once I had that conversation years later in 2016, I asked Brian the same question about Tony's lyrics, and he answered and responded. So both, again, without Brian's responses to the I know there's an answer and do we know Tony Asher, I think then the perspective of the reader remains, oh, Brian didn't say anything here, so that can't possibly be accurate. So having Brian as a part of that discussion was important and integral, because I think I think it shows people Brian was not a selfish songwriter. He just wasn't. So any narrative that anybody reads anywhere that suggests that Brian thought "Hang On to Your Ego" is better than "I Know There's an Answer." Well, Brian didn't think that way. He was not a selfish thinker. He had his opinions about things, certainly. But you can hear the Pet Sounds Sessions box set, any one of the variations that have come out over the years, and you hear he's a very open songwriter. He's very open. He's like a sponge. He wants to know what other people's suggestions are. He's interested in other people's perspectives. So when he's working with those great LA musicians and somebody plays something, he's like, "Oh, what's that?" And they joke around, and he says, "Okay, let's get to it." When it's not him being impatient, it's him wanting to get it done because he can feel it and he's in the moment. When we were talking before, you said that you thought the Love You album was brave, and I don't think it's brave at all. I think it's him being him. No different than Pet Sounds. Was Pet Sounds brave? I think Pet Sounds, like Love You and any other thing that Brian ever did, Till I Die, Lonely Sea, In My Room, Surfer Girl, Fun, 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 you name it, it's Brian being Brian. It's Busy Doing Nothing. I mean, you can name any song that he created or had something to do with, and I think it's all the same. It's where he was in that creative moment. I was listening to the We Got a Groove box set the last 2 days, and I hear a guy who I could almost hear that he was trying to find closure through music being his music was his muse. So when I listen to the We Got a Groove stuff, it sounds kind of frantic at times, almost like he's trying to, he did not go to his father's funeral, and I wonder, neither did Dennis, and I'm wondering if that ended up kind of being, a difficult burden for those two brothers, because Dennis didn't seem to heal. Whatever he was trying to get through. I mean, his demons kind of chased him till the end when he drowned. And Brian, I think, found deep refuge in his music. And I hear a lot of that on the We Gotta Groove box set. I mean, I hear a guy who's, and it doesn't matter whether the song is Still I Dream of It or Baseball. It's just kind of a frantic energy. It's like it's like an upbeat, frantic energy with moments of deep, painful beauty, similar to Pet Sounds. I mean, there's just some real deep stuff going on, and that was always the case with Brian. And I connect. Dennis Dyken and I were talking about this. One of the book signings that we connect. I don't know if it was the one you were at, but we connect "Lonely Sea" to "Till I Die." I mean,
Yes.
those
Yes.
songs are unique. I don't think it's unique. I don't think it's unique that those are linked at all. I think it's Brian. It's just Brian being Brian, and I would highly recommend. Although this book doesn't cover the era, I would highly recommend the digital releases. Wake the World, which is the Friends. They never did a physical release of it, but Wake the World and I Can Hear Music, which are the Friends era and the 2020 era, and they're digital only, so they're out there. But they're really interesting to listen to because Brian does, Walk On By, there's My Little Red Book. There's all these songs, fragmented pieces of music that are relationship songs. Honey Come Home, Lonely Days, Can't Wait Too Long. I mean, it's just this whole, and the real gold on the I Can Hear Music set is Audrey Wilson singing. What's the song she sings? It's just, oh gosh, it's been a while since I've listened to it, but it's great. She's, I almost had it. But just hearing Audrey sing is priceless to me because that's like 1968, 69, the recording, but just hearing her sing kind of helps me imagine what it was like for her with her three boys when they were really young. Um, I almost got you. Oh
I
man,
remember
it's on the tip of my brain.
I think I heard Dennis in an interview talking about how him and Carl and Brian used to harmonize together and their dad would cry because it
Mhm.
was just so
Yeah, I think
beautiful.
that's in the that was in the original An American Band documentary, and then it's been reused a couple of times, that
Yeah.
moment. And it was originally part of a Lorne Michaels produced from Saturday Night Live. He produced a Good Vibrations thing. It's on DVD from Eagle Rock. I'm sure it's up on YouTube or Prime or something.
Mhm.
But it's the one where they come in John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd as police come and get Brian out of bed and they take him surfing down in the
Oh,
ocean in
yeah.
his
I
backyard.
I've seen part of that.
Yeah,
I've seen a little bit of that. I think that's genius. I think that's so
it's
funny.
surreal. It's surreal.
Yeah. It's like,
It's
you know
very
he
odd.
can.
Come on, Brian. Let's go surfing now. Everybody's learning how. Come on in safari with us. He did not want to do that. He did not want to do any of that. He did not want to get in this ocean on his board. There was nothing he wanted to do. He didn't want none of it.
Mm,
And
I believe
he
it.
did, but he did it. Um, it's it's so silly. It's very surreal. And have you seen him on Saturday Night Live in '77?
No.
It's probably
See, I have a lot
online.
to learn.
Jodie Foster hosted. Brian appears in a skit as a police
Oh,
officer in an airport terminal with Lorraine Newman. Um, and he plays Good Vibrations. And then I think he plays a song from Love You. But it's just him. It's not the Beach Boys. It's just Brian.
wow. I need to look into that immediately. That sounds crazy.
But so yeah, there's just way too much made of. I just think there was just way too much made of how Mike protested the things. Now let's say Mike didn't say don't F with the formula. Maybe he would have said, you know, don't change things, which is basically more or less the same thing.
Yeah.
But even if that discussion took place, it would have taken place because Mike knew that his cousin, because they grew up together and they known each other way before they became the Beach Boys, that he could have that conversation with his cousin. And he knew that his cousin would hear his, I wouldn't call it objections, I would call it professional interest in the band's direction. So again, I think we just spend too much time with the. It's interesting to me. Almost a lot of the interviews I'm doing, people are asking me these questions about their relationships and stuff, and it's kind of like part of me just wants to say, read the book. I mean, because it's in there, but then they're asking me questions about the relationships later, like why the 2012 thing happened the way that it did, and it's I just don't think it's when I think about those types of questions, I think of Carl. I'm looking at that photo again right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Carl. So I just think of him, and I just don't think he would. I just don't believe that he would entertain that stuff because it's not. What's important is the music.
Absolutely.
So he's kind of my. I'd like even more so than what I do, but he's kind of my moral compass.
That's awesome. I think that that would definitely be good to, keep in mind. So this feels kind of silly to ask. There are things about him in here you were never able to really get in like contact with him like you were the other Beach Boys?
Who do you mean, Carl?
Carl.
Well, I didn't realize he was going to be gone so quickly.
That's true.
I started in '93, The photo I just showed you again is from 96, June of 96. Nothing, no, there was no word about him being diagnosed with cancer then. Um, and then when I learned that he had it, so this is the one time that I actually did a brief interview with him for Stars and Stripes on the spot. Um, and I had hoped to interview him for whatever their next thing was going to be. And nobody really knew when that was going to be. And then in 97, we interviewed Bruce backstage before a show. By that time, Carl was wearing a wig. He was undergoing chemotherapy. Um, and that's when we learned about a record deal falling through with V2, which was a subsidiary of Virgin Records, I think, where the guy who produced the High Llamas was coming to the Beach Boys and said, "We'll give you all the amount of money you need. You tell us what you need. You can be as creative as you want. You can do whatever you want to do. We will fund it." And it fell through because Joe Thomas had grabbed Brian up and was doing a solo record with him. So the deal went away. And so that was really unfortunate because Bruce, I think, was spearheading this thing where they were ready to give them whatever they needed, both in time and money. And so there was another opportunity in the Beach Boys' career where something great was going to happen, and then it didn't happen. And Carl was sick, and by that time, and so waiting. And the impression I had, and I think the band was hopeful that he was going to get through it. I did not understand how severe it was. I knew he had cancer, but I didn't realize it was in his brain and in his lungs. I didn't know the extent of it. When I became aware of the extent of it, in June of 97, when this interview with Bruce took place backstage, and I saw Carl, I didn't even then think, oh, he's not long for this world. I didn't have that thought. I thought, man, he's struggling. He was sitting on a stool on the stage. He was doing his best to get through the show, but he did a great job.
Yeah, it's amazing that he even was able to do that.
Well, he cared. He cared.
Yeah.
And see, again, just like Mike cares. It's not that different. Now, granted, Mike really gets a lot out of the give and take, performing for the audience and the love and admiration he gets back from the audience for making them feel good. It makes him feel good when he sees them respond, get up and dance or sing along, whatever it is. The multiple generations that he looks out and sees, all that means a great deal to them. And it meant a great deal to Carl, and it means a great deal to Al, and all of them. They all appreciated that. So again, my mindset is what made them, what made them like one another versus why were they at each other or this, that, or the other thing. And I don't know if I mentioned it the last time we spoke, but the whole Al in 2015 when I talked to him backstage and I said it'd be great if you guys would do Pet Sounds together in its entirety. Did I share that with you?
I don't think you told me that actually.
Okay. So it was November 2015. I don't remember the venue, but I was sitting with Al and I said to him, Al, as a fan, I would really like to see you guys all get together just for like one event, record a couple of shows where you do Pet Sounds in its entirety, have it be on HBO or some streaming service or something. And we were sitting in the catering room. Brian wasn't there. It was a Brian show, but he wasn't in the room at the time. So Al said, "Hey, everybody, did you hear that?" And so I think Darian was in the room, Bob Lizik, Marianne, Al's wife, was there. There's a handful of the musicians were there, and Al repeated what I said. And then without me saying another word, Al continued and said to the room, Ryan wants Mike on stage. And that told me all I needed to know.
Wow.
See, so again, this is like I touched on at the book signing. I don't know if we talked about this the other day. The whole, what would Carl do if Carl was involved? That's all I needed to know. Like regardless of any fan's perspective of John Stamos and his participation in the group, if Carl participated in the Forever video, that's all I need to know, because that meant Carl supported and liked and believed in that, and wanted to support John and wanted to do that with him. He wouldn't do it otherwise. He believed in it. Carl wanted to do something he didn't believe in, which is why he's not in the Wipeout video with the Fat Boys. He just, no thanks, you guys go ahead.
Mm.
um, and there was things throughout their career where I've read where Carl was not in favor. Like when they were recording the Keeping the Summer Alive album, Carl didn't want to do covers. And it's interesting because then on his 2 solo records, he would do covers. But he didn't want the Beach Boys to fall into the category of being a cover band. And they would continue to do covers until he was no longer with us. But I think maybe it must have dawned on him, hey, we're pretty good at it. Maybe we'll
It's a good
just,
point.
maybe we'll fit in a couple of covers here and there because
Yeah.
we're
And to
very
be
good at
fair,
it.
like on the early albums, like I mean, even they did like Miserloo, like like songs that already exist, like sort of standards. So it's a little different. But I mean, it's same with like the Beatles' early albums. They did standards, just in
Yeah,
different
they did.
genres.
Twist and Shout. I
Yeah,
mean, that's. I mean, they made that their own.
yeah.
So
With
yeah, it
John's like
wasn't.
super raspy voice because it was the last song they recorded.
Yes,
He sounds unrecognizable in that. It's
I love it. Plus,
yeah, it's
I also
amazing.
associate that song with Ferris Bueller's Day Off because
Yes,
of
I was
the,
gonna say that.
and that was the same year that became a hit again because of that film, and the same year Paul McCartney had a hit with Press to Play.
Wow.
Press was that? Yeah, because they were both on the record charts at the same time. McCartney's Press and Twist and Shout by the Beatles. I think Love Me Do even made a comeback at one point.
That's
Uh,
crazy.
well, yeah, but it's classic music, and Don't Worry Baby, I think, had a resurgence from the film Never Been Kissed. And then the Stranger Things soundtrack 2 or 3 years ago, because California Dreamin' was on it, it picked up airplay. The Beach Boys version of California Dreamin'. So these things are. It's not unusual for these things to come back. I there's and some songs will just never go away because they're
Yeah.
just classic.
It's actually interesting. I noticed with, and I think that you'd be interested to know this, with like I'm on YouTube. I do like YouTube shorts and stuff. And I actually have there was a time a couple months ago where I was seeing people make videos with in my room in the background. And I or random songs will just like come up. Like there was a time where one of the most popular songs on like TikTok and YouTube was Pretty Little Baby by Connie Francis. And it's right before she died too. All of a sudden she got like this huge like hit out of nowhere. And that tells me that even now it's like I think that the songs that continue to come back sort of are proving their staying power that way. And I'm grateful that, I still will sometimes stumble on the Beach Boys like on my For You page or something. Like it's really amazing. I have hope for the future. I have personally.
And it's just weird how people stumble across music. I mean, it's I don't know how people find certain things or what they manage to come across. It's nice if a young person who has a bunch of followers discovers something so that they can share it, and then that thing becomes known, but it's already known. That's just the thing.
Mhm.
It's just not known to the individual who discovers its followers, and then they discover it. And if the individual who has a bunch of followers, like 10 million followers or something, then 10 million people know the song all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But the song's already there. So that's kind of the interesting thing is I don't know how they discover or or come across the recordings, but it's just nice that they do because it just speaks to the staying power of the music. I wish it would be nice if more people, just generally speaking, could made it a point to go back and discover old music.
Absolutely. And I
But I
actually,
don't.
a lot of people who were very excited about this video, this interview with you, were people who I know for a fact are, I think, younger than me or around my age. So it's really amazing. I don't know exactly how I did it, but I managed to cultivate a a great fan base with like a lot of people who love the Beatles and the Beach Boys and all those people. And I think because I started my channel doing Beatles facts videos, like just rapid fire, all the random facts I ever learned. And yeah, no, so I'm like beyond excited like for this video to come out. I know that everyone's gonna love it, and I hope that this can also bring more exposure to what you do. The other day I was looking around, I found the ESQ, I found your YouTube channel, the Instagram. Obviously, I know you know your website and your book, and so I am going to link all of those things because I think what you do is great. I think that you're better at video editing than me, and I think that you are probably more of a consistent uploader. I post the most random stuff. Yesterday I posted, or 2 days ago, I posted myself. I have a kazoo, and I posted myself doing all of the American Idiot album, doing all the vocals with a kazoo. So it's a 56-minute video that just came out. And then the last video was about a Beatles movie. I was thinking about making a video about, you know, that Monkey's Uncle movie that the Beach Boys
Yes.
sang in?
Mhm.
It sounds ridiculous. So I'm like, I should go watch that just because they're
You
in it.
should.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really catchy song too. But
That's a good song.
yeah, I actually I have to have dinner at my grandparents' house. So I'm gonna wrap things up, unfortunately. But David, this was so special. Like, just thank you so much for even, it's such an honor to have gotten to do this with you. You are such a smart and wonderful person, and you have so much insight. And so, everyone who's watching this, please consider picking up an audiobook or a physical copy or paperback. And he's not even paying me to say this, it's just like good stuff. This book, All Summer Long by David Beard. And yeah, if you want, even if you do it like David did and you subscribe for 1 year and then cancel it, Endless Summer Quarterly, right? So thank you all very much for watching, and thank you, David, for coming on my
Okay, my
channel.
pleasure. Okay.